And verse 25, one of the more famous verses in this passage. Whether he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know. Though I was blind, now I see. He says, look, I'm not the judge of those sorts of things. I'll leave that up to you guys. Here's what I know. I was one way. Now I'm not. I was in darkness. Now I'm in the light. I was trapped, and now I'm set free. His sight is getting clearer and clearer. Look, there may come a day when you are confronted by someone trying to poke holes in what you believe. Most oftentimes it comes in regards to whatever the latest social agenda that everybody's talking about. And there are people who want to try and trap Christians and mock and belittle them for their faith. And look, it's good to be knowledgeable about the world and what is going on and to have an educated conversation with people. But in the midst of all of that, how sweet is it that we are able to, in any situation, say, look, here's what I know, man. I was blind, but now I see. My faith matters because I've seen it change my life. See, our faith can't be based solely on experience or feelings in the moment. Our faith should be based on God's truth revealed to us by God, the Spirit illuminating work in us to see and hear and understand the truth of the gospel. God's plan to redeem and restore and renew all things back to himself, to save us from our sin by sending Jesus to live on this earth, die in our place for our sins, and rise from the dead and offer us forgiveness and new life and grace through faith in Jesus Christ. But our personal experience of God's work in our lives is important in reaching other people for the gospel, helping them see that it's real and it matters today. Share your story. Share what you know. Share what you have experienced. Let others know how God has stepped in and brought light into your darkness. And I like the way that this man, over and over, he tells his story. He doesn't draw out the hardship and the pain of his before time. He could, man. He spent his entire life blind. Sometimes when we share our stories with people, when we share our testimony, we feel like we got to really emphasize the bad things. Just how dark it was, just how wicked we were, just how lost we were. But that doesn't need to be the focus. Yes, you can and should tell people how God has brought you, what God has brought you out of. But if you're going to put a focus on anything, if you're going to shine a light, shine it on Jesus. Shine it on who he is. Shine it on his truth. Shine it on the grace and the mercy and the love and the justice. Shine it on the new life. Shine it on the freedom you have received. Yeah, I was blind. That's not all that interesting. You know what's interesting? Now I see. Now I'm new. Now I'm living a fully abundant life. Now I'm resting. Now I'm abiding in God's word. That's the interesting. That's the miracle. That's the amazing. It's real and it's happening and it matters now, here in this life, not just for later. The Pharisees are clinging to the hope that they've been lied to or tricked, that something's being kept from them. It's if they feel like it's if they're being kept in the dark. And the irony is they are, by their own hate and jealousy and ego and self-righteousness. They ask again how this happened, and at this point, it's like a joke to the man. He says to them, do you also want to be his disciples? And the Pharisees didn't like that question at all. They get angry with the man. Verse 28, they say, we are the disciples of Moses. Moses and the law and the generations of oral tradition, that's what we know, that's what we stand on. And the irony of all of that is that Jesus has said already, all of the things that they cling to, all of the things that they hold on to so dearly, all of it point to this moment in time that they're living in when the blind would see. John's already handled this difference in the opening prologue in chapter 1. For the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God, the only God who is at the Father's side. He has made him known. The fullness of given revelation came exclusively through Jesus. In fact, Jesus had the same discussion with the Pharisees in chapter 5, verse 46. If you believed Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote of me. But if you do not believe his writings, how will you believe my words?" But the Pharisees are still so hung up on Jesus' identity. They've been misunderstanding it and him throughout his entire ministry. They've been wandering in the darkness. Now look at verse 30. The man answered them, "Why, this is an amazing thing. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes." This is an amazing thing. That's what the Pharisees should have said from the jump when they heard about this miracle. Instead, it's this man seeing clearly that the Pharisees' hearts and motives are wicked in all of this. He sees that they have no interest in the truth or understanding. They just want to find a way to spin this whole thing to make Jesus the bad guy. The man is beginning to see truth. He explains to them, he is talking to the Pharisees, and he says to them, God listens to those that are his followers. And what has happened here to me has never happened before in the history of time. If Jesus wasn't from God, he could do nothing. So he must be from God. This logic from this formerly blind man, which I don't understand why we don't have this guy's name, but that's a whole other conversation. This logic is the very thought process that they're trying to tear down. They know it to be true, but they hate it. They were caught in checkmate, but rather than trying to lay down their king and admit defeat, they'd rather just flip the board and run away and pout. They kicked the man out of the temple for telling the truth. In the house that I grew up in, my bedroom was in the basement, and it had no windows on it. It was on one of the walls, had no windows in it. Awesome place to get a good night's sleep. Turn the light off, pitch black in there. It was great. But coming out of that room in the morning, you take about 3 steps, and there was a side door that went down to the basement, and that side door had windows on it. And so you take about 3 steps, and the sun would hit you right in the face, just the way that the angle was. And coming out of that pitch black room and getting hit in the face with sun, it would be disorienting and make me want to retreat back into the cave. That's what's happening to these leaders here. The light is being shown on them, and they don't like it. And so rather than deal with it, they cast the man out. They expel him from the synagogue. They expel him from Jewish community. This man's whole world has been flipped around like 4 different times in one day. And as we said at the top, have you noticed, though he's been talked about a lot, and he's been considered a bunch, we haven't seen or heard from Jesus since he told the man, go wash in the pool of Siloam. Where's Jesus? Well, he's going to show up here in Act 3 in the questioning. We get to verse 35. Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and having found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered, "And who is he, sir, that I may believe in him?" Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and it is he who is speaking to you." He said, "Lord, I believe," and he worshiped him. Once again, it is Jesus taking the initiative. Jesus hears the man has been cast out, and Jesus goes looking for him. The man is overwhelmed by the gift he has received. Remember, he's seeing everything for the first time in his life. He's overwhelmed by the gift he has received, as well as the tension and division it has caused. Where does he go next? What does he do? He's just lost his entire community. He's lost his bloodline. He's lost everything, and he's just lost. There's a phrase used in the nautical world. If you ever get thrown out of a boat, or if you're diving and something happens and you get disoriented and you don't know what to do next, there's a phrase you're supposed to remember. It's bubbles up. Air bubbles will always go to the surface. So if you're disoriented underwater, you get hit by a current or something, you let a little bit of air out, bubbles go up, you follow the bubbles up. You follow them back to where you want to go. So when the chaos hits, bubbles up. In the chaos of life, when you are rocked and reeling and your compass is spinning, there is a guiding point. There is a standard bearer. There is a safety spot, a security spot, a stability spot. His name is Jesus. He will always show up. He will always come looking. He will always come searching and seeking after you. He extends the hand. He makes the way. He calls you. He invites you to himself. I picture this man lost in the crowd, overwhelmed by everything he sees, his senses on the fritz. He has no idea where to go, and Jesus shows up. He finds him and asks him a question. Do you believe in the Son of Man? The formerly blind man never saw Jesus, but my guess is that voice is etched into his head and heart. Do you believe in the Son of Man? Why this title? Why this here? It's one of the most common ways Jesus refers to himself. It's the title of the one in the Old Testament who would accomplish the work of God in the world. It's referring to Daniel 7. This great one who looks like the Son of Man. This great one would come from and return to the very presence of God, and he is given dominion and glory and an eternal kingdom. Jesus asked, do you believe in the Son of Man? Do you believe in this one who comes from God, who will return to God, and through whom the works and will of God will be carried out on this earth? And the man replies in verse 36, who is he that I may believe in him? He's ready. He's genuinely looking. Unlike the Pharisees who were looking for any reason not to believe, this man is looking for the one to believe. In verse 37, Jesus answers, no doubt with a smile on his face. You've seen him, and it is he who speaks to you. Lord, I believe. And he worshiped him.